Welcome to Fast Fuel, your bite-sized sports nutrition podcast designed to help you get the latest science, news and insights from the world of performance nutrition in 20 minutes or less, brought to you by Get Pro Professional. I'm your host, James Morehen, and I have over 10 years experience working in professional and elite sport, from sports like rugby, football and boxing, but also endurance athletes. Each episode, we will be joined by a special guest working at the forefront of elite sport or academia to get their nuggets of knowledge on their own specialist area of sports or sports nutrition. From learning how to fuel and support teams through major tournaments, to starting out as a new sports nutritionist and hearing the latest on protein science and research, we have you covered here on Fast Fuel. So sit back, relax and get ready to learn from the best of the best in the world of sports nutrition. Welcome to Fast Fuel. Let's go. Today we're joined again by Louise Sutton, Head of Sports and Exercise Nutrition at Leeds Beckett University, to talk about nutrition for extreme challenges. For those that didn't catch your last episode, Louise, could you just give a brief introduction as to who you are and what you're currently up to?
Yeah, so I'm Louise Sutton. I'm Head of Sport and Exercise Nutrition at Leeds Beckett University. So in that role, I'm really fortunate to lead a large team of academics, researchers, applied practitioners and PhD students who work across a range of sports, principally in a range of team sports, rugby, football, cricket, netball, but also athletics and more recently dance.
Nice. And on the previous episode, we asked about your favourite sporting moment of all time, which you very eloquently articulated around the Super Saturday. Very memorable moment for a lot of us, and your favourite food and childhood dream, etc. But on this episode, what is your favourite athlete or team of all time?
I'm not sure about my favourite of all time, but my favourite for now, I'll stick with the athletics theme and go with Keely Hodgkinson and her winning the 800 metres gold medal at the recent Paris Olympics. I think she's achieved a phenomenal amount in her very short athletics career to date, and hopefully she'll go on to achieve much more. Awesome.
So today we're going to be talking about extreme environments, extreme challenges, and how nutrition can really be at the forefront of some of these situations. So can you give us an insight into some of the projects and or work that you've been involved in terms of extreme challenges?
Yes, I've been really fortunate in my time at the university to get involved in a range of extreme challenges or challenges in extreme environments, from supporting Himalayan expeditions, particularly a project to Everest in 2006, where the team were trying to summit Everest by the West Ridge, which is technically one of the most challenging routes up to the summit. I've also supported Atlantic Rows, polar challenges, solo ocean racing challenges, transcontinental cycle challenges. And again, I've sort of approached all of those challenges by trying to get underneath what the particular nutritional challenges might be for the athletes or the clients engaged, and to try and sort of come up with some really simple strategies to support them from a very practical perspective. So not to overcomplicate things, because the challenge itself is complicated. So if we can make the nutrition and the nutritional interventions and strategies we put into place really, really simple, then that's something that I've kind of strived to achieve with those types of sport nutrition opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we're beginning to touch on it now in terms of the importance of nutrition and what does that look like on some of these expeditions, and in the mountains and these races around the world in a boat. Can we dive into a little bit on the nutrition specifics of what that looks like? How are they practicing it, and logistically, how do you then implement it and deliver it?
Yeah, I guess really at a basic level, the two main nutritional concerns for any of these challenges is meeting your energy and fluid needs, particularly when probably you're operating in environments where achieving that is even more, one, critical, but also difficult due to lack of availability or due to, some of the physiological changes that go on that impact our appetite and kind of thirst responses, which can just compound the problem even more. Again, when you're taking on some of those extreme challenges, that the energy costs and demands of that are going to be high. So actually just consuming large volumes of food for some of these athletes and competitors, if you like, is a real challenge. And again, at some point in undertaking these extreme challenges, appetite will be challenged in some way, and that isn't just in relation to those that might be going to altitude where we know appetite is challenged, but just challenges of long duration at some point during that time, you are likely to struggle with your appetite.
And for the logistics, so the round the world boat expedition that you spoke about, the weight that's being carried up in the mountains, the ability to cook, buying more food or taking the amount of food with you. I mean, there's some serious constraints here that have to be considered, isn't there? So how does that differ maybe from land to sea, but also then from on the ground versus in the mountains?
So I think you've picked up on something there. Actually, the weight of the food is a key factor probably in all of them, whether you are carrying your food up a mountain or you're transporting it on a bike, or you're using it as ballast in your boat and you move that around to influence the speed of the boat as well. So weight of food actually, and trying to obviously the lighter the boat, the lighter the weight of food to carry is always kind of a key factor in that. So then trying to, maximize the calories from the lightest weight in food possible is a kind of key factor in all of those challenges. And then obviously adding to that, foods that then are palatable to be consumed is an additional factor as well, because any food taken or carried and not consumed is just wasted energy and effort.
And we quite often talk about nutritionists in terms of practicing your race day or competition strategy. In particular, we know, trying to get the gut used to taking on certain loads of carbohydrates. So, but how do you practice the strategy that you're going to go and do in the mountains if you're not in the mountains?
Okay. I guess if I can take that back a step to start with, I always see these extreme challenges as having two phases in terms of nutritional planning and nutritional intervention. So for me, there's always phase one is around getting the athlete, getting the client to the start line. So there's the interventions we might put into play from a nutritional perspective to support them with their training and the build-up of that training as the event or the challenge, comes to its start, if you like. So actually optimizing nutrition at that point, keeping the athlete, healthier, having a healthy functioning immune system, the athlete being able to recover effectively from any training they're doing is really important, and getting them to the start line. And then there's, because actually that's likely to be compromised once they're in the event itself, will likely not be meeting their nutritional needs once they're in the event itself. And then the second phase really is that challenge, that event, in event plan. And that's the bit that again needs to be practiced in training. So again, everything that's being taken needs to be trialed and tested in some way, shape or form, because again, if it's not consumed, then it's wasted. So trying to do that in as near to the conditions that you think you're going to be in is obviously optimal. But again, not everybody can get into an altitude chamber or a heat chamber to kind of experience the kind of environmental conditions that they they might encounter on the challenge itself, but trying to replicate things as near to possible. We had one athlete who was doing the Marathon des Sables, and he literally lived on his event plan for a week during an intense phase of his training. And okay, you can't replicate the conditions that you're going to get in the desert in February in Yorkshire, but you can, at least they knew that they had tried and tested all of those products. And if they weren't palatable at home when it's less stressful, then they're not likely to be things that they would want to consume when they're under the stress of the event itself.
Yeah. And are you still trying to promote kind of that food first approach during these extreme environments and challenges, or is there the acceptance that actually we've probably got to veer here towards lightweight supplements that are powdered and, we can package them? Is that kind of what happens in these situations?
In a lot of these cases, yes, you're clearly using lots of the dehydrated kind of meal options and then supplements that the athletes are familiar with. But again, real foods are really important. So actually, again, from a comfort point of view, and again, that's something we've kind of learned through these extreme challenges, is that, again, quite often the athletes and the clients think I'm going to go down that route of using kind of a standard set of supplements that are, carbohydrate based, energy gels, energy bars, energy drinks. And actually at some point during the challenge, that kind of fatigue sets in with that, and there's a shift in a preference to more savoury kind of products as well. So again, it's trying to educate them around that as well. So yes, the other things that we've done is like you strip out any unnecessary packaging, because again, it's extra weight to carry. So things from a real kind of practical kind of perspective. And again, healthy eating probably goes out of the window here, and there will be things that I will recommend in these situations that wouldn't be part of somebody's kind of standard nutritional kind of profile, if you like.
Yeah. In terms of developing that meal plan for either a 5-day expedition, 10-day, or we were talking earlier about some of the round the world boat expeditions are 80 days to 250 or in and around that region. Like what does that plan actually look like? Are you giving them a printed out booklet to say, here's your nutrition Bible for the next 100 days, or is it WhatsApp PDFs?
I think what's really important with these challenges is that you co-create that meal plan with the athlete, with the client. Actually, they will have done, I found in the work that we've done, they've already done a lot of planning and preparation around this, and they've started the work on that. And really what you're going in and doing is tinkering around the edges with that. And quite often what they want is additional confidence that the things that they're planning to put into place are going to work for them, which again is why encouraging the trialing and the testing of everything is important. But I would say that in most cases, you're not starting from scratch, that the athlete and client themselves have already done a lot of work around that. They'll have already worked out what dehydrated meals work for them and what's palatable for them. They'll have already been experimenting with kind of supplements that work for them, and maybe you're coming in and you're just maybe adding a few sprinkles around that and the cherry on the top, and the things that they kind of they haven't maybe thought of yet.
Yeah, and just on that, can you give an example about what some of them sprinkles on top might be with people that seem to be quite on top of it, but then you present and say, well, you haven't thought of this, and this could really help. Yeah,
I think actually that one of the examples would be the one that I shared earlier around this, at times maybe over reliance or on kind of sweet, carbohydrate rich supplements, and actually just maybe asking them to consider what might be their go-to if their appetite was struggling, and you've over relied on those products. Where would you go then? What would it be that you would you would, what's your favourite meal, and what would what would that look like in this situation?
Have you ever done a one-to-one with somebody who's kind of prepped and ready, and you're going through what they've previously done, and you've seen an item of food or drink in a plan that you've been quite shocked by? You've gone, wow, as if you want to consume that. Is there any standout items or drinks that you were surprised by?
No, but going back to the Everest project that we did, one of the things that we created as part of that project was what we called a Magic Menus Day list, which was food items that you would expect to get at home, which would include things like, good quality coffee, cake mixes that could be made up at base camp. But one of the items actually that the team packed was a big camembert cheese. So actually that getting transported to the Himalaya and still being fit to eat when it got there was, something that, we let them pursue.
I can imagine it now though, like the raise in energy levels or camaraderie and emotion when, you've been living on kind of packet food or dehydrated food, and then all of a sudden something like that comes out. I mean, you see it in I'm a Jungle, don't you, when they get their little treats and how much that means to them.
Yeah. So I think that's a big point, actually, not forgetting the impact that food can have on mood, morale and motivation.
Yeah, powerful. Louise, we've touched on it slightly around how powerful food can be in terms of understanding taste fatigue, sugars versus the salt, but then also the emotional side of food, especially for these longer expeditions. Have you ever had feedback from some of these guys that are doing the longer ones in terms of, it was 82 days in and then I pulled out this and it really made me have a good day?
Yes, again, we've strategically planned for that in some of the projects we've supported. So with the solo ocean racing challenge that we were working with, we actually strategically packed things up in 10-day menu cycles rather than weekly menu cycles, again, to kind of break a routine with that. But what we did in those 10-day food packs was when there was a birthday or Christmas, we actually put, items in there that, you would get on your birthday or at Christmas. And again, the feedback on that and how well that was received. And those were items in those food packs that, the athlete wasn't expecting to be there because they weren't part of that detailed list that we'd worked with them on. So yeah, it can be really powerful.
Yeah. And just give us an example of the approximate calorie intake that some of these athletes are required to consume on a daily basis to be able to sustain the energetic cost of what they're doing.
Yeah. So when we were working with the guys trying to summit Everest, generally that was somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 calories a day, higher than that for the largest member of the team.
Yeah, wow. And then some of the boat events, is it a little bit lower?
Obviously we were working with a female there, and again, energy requirements. That was an interesting one because they had decided before they engaged with us that they were looking to take around 2,000 calories a day and were planning for that. We obviously did some work around that and suggested that actually probably you're going to need to be nearer double that. We negotiated somewhere between the two, and we planned for an energy intake around actually 3,000, 3,200 calories a day. Now, interestingly, when we recorded the kind of data and analysed the data, the energy intake averaged not too far above 2,000 calories a day, but there were days when the higher end of the recommendation that we put in was achieved. And we also knew from some doubly labelled water data that we collected at 2 time points during the challenge that actually our estimations for energy requirement were in line with what was required from that point of view. So we were actually pretty happy with that in terms of where we pitched in. But what it showed to us was that actually in encouraging the athlete to take more calories, actually that increased the range of food items available to them as well. And actually that facilitated actually a better experience for them, I think, was the way that they reflected on it with us. And then we kind of then started thinking, well, actually then did we cause the boat to run slower because it had more food on that wasn't consumed? Yeah. And you start getting into kind of performance questions around that. However, the athlete in their reflections with us afterwards was adamant that actually the strategy was right. Yeah. Even though the average energy intake was nearer to what they were predicting or planning to take in the first instance.
And then finally, Louise, to wrap up to today's episode, is for those that are working in extreme challenging environments or athletes in those situations, what would be your top 3 bits of advice for the practitioner to, that you have to get this right?
Keep it simple. Trial and test, or test and trial, and encourage self-monitoring in the athlete. And a final thing that I think is really important is building a post-event debrief with the athlete. One of the things that I've learned through supporting many of these challenges is whatever the athlete tells you before they set off in terms of that this is the last one, they usually come back and want to take on something even more extreme and even more challenging. So in terms of what they might learn and you might learn through debriefing the strategies you've put in place can be invaluable to the next one.
Yeah, I think that's a really super important point is the debrief document that you then reflect back on and you refine and then you go again. So very valuable point there. Look, Louise, today's been incredible. It's been fascinating listening to you explain your case study examples and the experiences that you've got in this area of nutrition and extreme environments. So thank you so much for sharing that. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you.